Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jax, and today, I'm just gonna get all situated here. Today, we are talking about cutting your losses, because at some point in life, at some point in life, you do have to just cut your losses. Does this look good? Ooh, accent lighting. I can't actually tell if that looks good or not. You know what? We're just gonna go with it. Okay, so cutting your losses. I think, there we go. Sorry, I am the worst YouTuber on the planet. So there are points in our life where, you have invested energy, effort, money, time with individuals, situations, places, things. You've invested time, and at some point you need to realize that it's a losing game and you have to cut your losses and move on, because you are just going to be constantly sinking money or energy into something that is not giving you anything back. And what I mean by that is like a situation or a person that just is not productive in your life. And that can be a really difficult situation to come to. It's really hard to come to a point where you're like, I just got to cut and run. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep my energy this high when we're going to say a person for this, but it applies to everything. I can't keep putting my energy into this person. It's just not working. I don't feel good. It's been so hard. You might have a long history with this person. They might be a family member. And you're just like, no, enough is enough. I can't keep doing this. And that can be very hard. It can be very sad, very heartbreaking, but it can also be very liberating and very freeing. So that's what we're gonna get into today. So yes, I'm in pajamas. Do not judge me. It's early in the morning, so there we go. Yeah, cutting your losses. What inspired me to make this? Basically, I was just thinking about certain relationships I've had throughout my life. Various people I've talked to, people I've dated, people I've, gone to school with, childhood friends, certain extended family members, things like that, at some point you're just like, I'm not doing this anymore, and even certain situations. I mean, I did gymnastics for a really long time, and it eventually got to a point where it was just so hard on my body, and I was like, what am I doing this for? And I was pretty young, and it was like, we can't keep doing this. So, there have been situations and people in my life that you just got to cut your losses and move on. And that's a big thing in nature. It's a big thing in business. If you have there's this thing called the sunk cost fallacy. And it's this idea that, well, you've already invested so much energy or money into this thing, like you got to see it through. And it's a fallacy, because it might never come to anything. You might be expecting it and it's just never going to happen. So it's a fallacy, because it's like, do not let your brain take you to this moment where it's like, well, I've known them forever, or, I've put so much money into this thing. Because there does come a point, and it's like the turning point in a situation or in a relationship, where there really is no going back. I mean, you are done. You're done. You're like, this is game over, unfortunately. So it is quite frustrating. It's heartbreaking to get to that point and just be like, oh my goodness. Because I mean, especially with relationships, especially if you are dating somebody or you are seeing somebody just loosely, and then you learn something, or you get to a point where you're like, man, this isn't going to work right now, or ever, or whatever. And that sucks, because you've put all of this energy into something. You have worked so hard to make this all work, and nope. But I will say the hardest part about this whole thing is actually cutting your losses. Like the actual moment that you decide to text them or message them and say, hey, I'm sorry, but this isn't going to work for me. You can be polite about it. You can be really honest about it and just be like, you know what? Like, I'm putting in so much effort and you're putting in like 10% at the most. So bye-bye. So you can choose how you cut your losses and how you just get out of the situation. But yeah, in my opinion, you got to follow your heart and just be like, this ain't gonna fly. This is not my vibe. Sorry, not sorry, but we've got to move on. We've got to can we change the language? Like, can we switch this up? Like, I'm done here. And that happened on the farm when I was a kid. My father and my grandfather realized that the farm was not going to be practical in the early 2000s. Like, it was all going totally end up. It was not a good situation, especially if you were a pig farmer in Canada. And so, they had always thought like, oh, like Jack will take over the farm, and like, we're building this little dynasty in Canada here. And, I was born on the farm and raised on the farm and everything. And, at some point they both realized like, nope, there is no future in this. We have to cut our losses. And we did. I mean, we cut a lot of loss. Yeah, and I was talking to my dad not too long ago about it, and he was like, yeah, I genuinely thought that you boys, like my brother and I, you boys would be taking over the farm and doing all of this stuff. And, we just got to a point where it was like, this is impossible, and I don't even wish this future for my boys. I don't want my boys to grow up being pig farmers. And so we had to cut our losses, and we left that farm. And yeah, it was quite a altering thing for all of us. I mean, like, yeah, for someone who like grew up there and that was our whole existence, and like grew up in my grandparents' house that they built when they came here to this country, like, but at some point you have to cut your losses. And so thankfully my father and my grandfather and, obviously my grandmother and my mother were involved, but thankfully everybody decided like, no, we've got to cut our losses. This is not viable. And that's what it came to, is this is not viable. And so we got out of it, and thankfully we have been, not necessarily absolutely thriving, but we've been doing amazing ever since, and working so hard. And even today we work so hard. So it led to a much better future. Whereas if we had just toughed it out and, stayed to it and been consistent, we might not have anything now. It was a really bad situation. So yeah, and I think it goes back to what I just said there about, is this viable? And you really need to ask yourself, in whatever relationship, whatever situation you find yourself in, is this viable? Because there needs to be some kind of future. I'm a big advocate for living in the present, not letting situations emotionally affect you and, cause you to have these like epic highs and lows. I'm a big advocate of that. But there is nothing wrong with looking at a situation or a relationship or, a potential career or whatever it may be. I mean, it really could be anything, guys. There's nothing wrong with looking at it and going, is this viable? Is this sustainable in the long term? Am I going to be able to do this or be with this person, for the rest of my life, or, for the foreseeable future? Or, how does this situation make me feel? Does it make me feel good when I'm in it? Does this person make me feel good when I'm around them? And cutting your losses requires a lot of honesty with yourself. It requires a lot of looking at things introspectively and going, is this what we're doing? Because if you can be honest with yourself about that, and you can cut your losses on situations that just aren't the vibe, you will save yourself so much heartbreak, so much difficulty, so much money. Oh my gosh. But it is really hard. It's like definitely part of the human condition to like want to continue and stick it out and fight through it and stuff. Like, that's a big part of like being human, and it's led to a lot of human success and achievement and technological growth. However, cutting your losses also saves you a lot of time, and it's probably just as responsible for our success as a species as sticking it out. Like if our ancestors encountered like a really hostile situation when they were migrating somewhere, on the plains of whatever continent, and they realized like, oh no, this is not where this isn't viable, and they moved on. They cut their losses and they moved on. They found greener pastures, hopefully, and were able to thrive. So, and don't feel like a failure when you've decided, I have to cut my losses, I have to move on, because it's not failure. It's deciding that this isn't working, this isn't viable, So I've got to move on and I've got to do my own thing. Yeah. Rant over. Sorry, I feel like I'm ranting in this one, but I feel strongly about this. I was just thinking about this like throughout the week, and I was like, you know what? Cut your losses. Like, when to cut your losses, I think is what we're gonna call this. I like obsess over the titles. I'm like, I don't know what to call this. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate all of you being here. I really hope you're enjoying these. Apparently I do not promote enough, so I'm just gonna quickly say, follow me on Patreon, follow me on all the things. I am so grateful that you guys are here and like my content and tolerate listening to me. Like, that really warms my heart. I love hearing your stories. Please let me know, and in the comments let's talk about cutting your losses and when to cut your losses, and maybe give us examples of when you cut your losses and thank goodness. I think we've all had a situation where we got out of something and we're like, oh man, I dodged a bullet. Like, that was freaky, or that was crazy, or this person was insane. So I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me. I love you guys, and as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.